Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 435 podcast. I'm your host, Robert McFarland. Over the next several episodes, guys, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the 2025 municipal elections. Mayors and city council members from all over Southern Utah are going to be seeking your vote in helping shape the future of our cities. So this is the place that you're going to be able to get one-on-one conversations with all the candidates to help you make the best decision for you come election season. So please make sure you like and subscribe, share it with other voters throughout Washington County, and make sure they have the information they need to make the decisions that are going to be best for us in the county. We hope you enjoy this episode and this series of episodes, guys. We'll see you out there.
From the Blue Form Media Studios, this is the 435 podcast, the pulse of Southern Utah.
Kevin Thomas.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on the show. You're running for Hurricane City Council.
Yes.
All right, man. So you're a current city council member now,
Yes.
right? And what made you want to get into local politics? Have you held other local political roles, or what kind of drove you to that?
Before I ran for city council, I was legislative district chair in the Washington County Republican Party.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed doing that.
Yeah.
Volunteer position. It was elected.
Yeah.
Within the party. But I got a lot of satisfaction out of it. I've always followed politics my whole life. My mom was very political.
Yeah.
And, I remember going into her room as she's watching the news and saying, "Tell me about the Iran-Contra affair. What's going on with that?"
That's crazy, yeah.
Ronald Reagan was the first president that I ever got to vote for, and I was a senior in high school. And
everybody voted for Reagan.
Yeah. And so I have been following politics my entire adult life. It's just ingrained in me.
Yeah.
And so I think I saw this city council. I had a neighbor that was a member of the city council, and he was not running again, so there was an open seat. And I thought, I ought to give that a try. I think I've got something to offer. And I was pretty ignorant about how things work in the city.
Mm-hmm.
But I jumped in, I got elected, and I really enjoyed the first term. And so I served a term from 2016 to 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And then when election time came up that round, there were a lot of people that ran for the seat.
Mm-hmm. There
were 3 of us running, and there were like 9 of us or more, maybe 12 of us that were running against each other. And I lost that election. There were a lot of good people running. Nanette was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And
in the primary?
In the primary.
Mm-hmm.
And I made it through the primary. I made it clear to the final election, but I lost by 100 votes. She made it. And it was really a good thing because I really admire Nanette and what she's done as a mayor.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people question that she's also my sister-in-law. She's my wife's sister.
Yeah, you guys, there's a lot of relations out there just in general anyway, because it's still a small town. I mean, how big's the city again? Like
26,000, I think, ish.
Yeah.
But she's my wife's little sister. She was 15 when we got married.
Okay.
And so, but when you're from a family of 13 children, which they are, you're related to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so,
they're not the only family with 13 children. There's like 70.
There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, there's a bunch of families out there. 10's like, well, if you haven't hit 10, have you really had a family yet? You know what I mean?
Right. So they had moved briefly from Hurricane to Monroe, and I grew up in Richfield. And so we were rivals, and my wife and I met and got married, and a couple of years after, well, it wasn't even that long, a year after we got married, I said, let's move down to Hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
And after I worked construction.
What year was that?
That was 1985.
85, okay.
And we lived in a trailer and just a humble little family.
Yeah.
We made next to nothing. And I worked for a builder in Santa Clara. And after a couple of years, there was a recession.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, I need to go back to school really bad. So we moved to Orem, went to school. And after a couple of years and graduation, we lived in Kearns.
Okay.
And then I said, I want to move near family.
Yeah.
And my family was all running everywhere. I couldn't keep up with them. And I said, let's move to Hurricane. That's where your family lives, a lot of them. And she said, are you sure you want to move to my family?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So we moved to Hurricane again in 1991, and we built a home, and we still live in the same home, and it's home. But I'm not related to anybody in Hurricane by blood except my children and grandchildren.
Yeah.
But my wife's related to all kinds of people. It's just the nature of the game.
Yeah. So what did you do for work when you moved back down here?
I'm a draftsman.
Okay.
I got a degree in drafting, so I'm a home designer.
Cool.
And I've had my own business doing that. I have a website. I sell my homes online. And
yeah.
A lot of my plans I do in Arizona. I don't even do that many in Hurricane, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I do plans all over, whoever will hire me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So then you ran, you lost, and then you ran again.
So 2 years passed.
And then.
And during that 2 years, COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
COVID was a really big deal for everybody.
Yeah.
It had a tremendous impact on our town, like everyone.
Mm-hmm.
What I saw happen during the COVID lockdowns and such bothered me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was determined that I was not going to allow that I had a place to play, something to do where I could help affect a change in how things were done to protect people.
Yeah.
And so I had a son pass away. My youngest of 6 children passed away at the age of 19.
Oh, man.
In 2020. He passed away in June, just a week ago, 5 years. And he passed away of a sudden illness that was undiagnosed. I don't think it had anything to do with COVID, but they put COVID as one of the reasons for his death.
Really?
He went into the hospital with a lung problem. Not a lung problem. He had hemolytic anemia, where his body was killing itself, killing its own red blood cells.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the lack of oxygen in his blood, they said, we need to put him on a ventilator.
Oh, no.
And we said, well, why, if his lungs are fine, why is he needing to be on a ventilator? They said, well, he doesn't have enough oxygen to his organs. We've got to get it spread out. But there's a new law that says we have to test him for COVID. But don't worry, he's going to come back negative. He doesn't have any symptoms of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And then he tested positive for COVID.
Mm.
His roommates didn't have COVID. His girlfriend didn't have COVID. Nobody else that had been around him had COVID. I didn't believe he had COVID. But when he was diagnosed with COVID, they kicked us out of the hospital and said, sorry, you can't be here with him anymore.
Oh, my gosh. Man, I'm so sorry.
It was a really big deal in our life. And a couple of days later, he died. And I didn't want to see the lockdowns, the mask mandates, all of those negative impacts. I thought as a city councilman, I could have an effect over that, and I could stop the lockdowns. I could help protect people.
Yeah.
And so that was my main motivation for running a second term.
Mm-hmm.
And I got elected for another term. But I then realized how much I didn't know the first 4 years. I learned a lot in the first 4 years. The biggest thing I think I learned running again was I learned how to stand up for myself and my own votes and opinions.
Mm-hmm.
When you're first elected to the city council, there's so much pressure.
And there's a lot of opinions coming at you.
A lot of opinions. And, frankly, a lot of the things are things that I'd never heard of, was still learning to understand what does it mean to change the zone and how does this impact everything, and big decisions that people that are new and aren't experienced with, you struggle with. And so as a councilman, you're one of 5 votes. You're like looking around at the other city councilmen like, well, how are they going to vote?
Yeah.
And the last thing you want is to be the first one to vote.
Yeah.
And sometimes even worse, it's to be the last one to vote and break a tie.
Yep, that's right.
And so you're always nervous and looking around at the other council members. And so to me, the whole first 4 years was a learning experience.
Yeah.
You're learning what things are, how they work, and how to be independent in your thinking.
How they interconnect and things like that.
Yeah. So the second term is where I feel like I really defined my ability to stand up and vote for what I think.
And feel confident that you're doing the right thing.
It took a lot of prayer on a lot of issues, a lot of study. And, because I'm related to the mayor and I'm related, there was another councilman that's a cousin to my wife, and you've got family and friends in the audience all the time watching and things. There were some pretty heated issues that came up on our votes that I had to take a stand and vote differently than they wanted me to.
Yeah.
Just because I felt like I needed to vote differently. Mm-hmm. And that's the hardest thing a person will ever face. Yeah. It's easy. All of us look at our politicians and go, "Oh, you dirty bugger, you did this, and you shouldn't do it that way." And we're armchair quarterbacks.
Yeah, exactly. I was yelling at the Yankees last night. I was like, "What are you doing?"
And when you change from sitting in the audience or watching from a distance, and now you're behind the rostrum, everyone's looking at you, it's really different.
Yeah, it's different.
And it's so much harder to make a decision and be confident that you're making the right decision.
So let me back up. So what do you think, after all that experience, what do you think the proper role of government is at the municipal level? Like, what is that role? What's the proper role? What are they supposed to impact? I hear that a lot. Have you heard that a lot? Like, this is the proper role. What's the proper role of
Abraham Lincoln was the first one that talked about, or that I remember quoting, and that was, "It is up to the federal government to provide for the states what the states cannot provide for themselves."
Okay. So at the city level, what's the proper role at the city level?
To me, that's the same policy of, we provide for the citizens what they cannot provide.
Okay.
And so you have infrastructure is something that citizens can't provide. Mm-hmm. Law and order is something that they really can't provide for themselves without it being chaos. Mm-hmm. And so the city has that role to help provide all of those things that we depend on every day for our lives. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it gets out of hand even on a local level. We know it's out of hand on a federal level and a state level. Mm-hmm. The state and the federal government are providing far more than they should, doing far more than we should, and we become dependent on them for everything.
Yeah. I mean, there's been times where, those state and local governments didn't do it in a way that was protecting their citizens. There was a portion of it. I'll use like labor laws, right? Is like, areas of Kentucky, the government came in and made labor laws specifically because these big corporations were exploiting the labor, and because those were left to the cities and the states to make those laws, there was exploitation going on, right? So you have the federal government's looking at what's happening over here, and they're like, "Hey, we need to make a change here because the local governance isn't doing what they should be doing in protecting the whole of their citizen population," right? And so you have this ebb and flow of, hey, we see an injustice, and because it's not being done in a fair and equitable way, they feel like this need to get in, and then they never leave, right? Then they come in and they overreach, and then there's no pushback, and so it's interesting to see this ebb and flow of it. So I think there's pros and there's cons to both of these things and how they balance out, but it should be a push and pull. I think that's the name of the Constitution, is this tension between the local municipalities and the federal government. So for you, this is a good follow-up, is what is the relationship between local government and higher levels of government? What do you think that relationship should look like?
Well, oftentimes I'm offended by what the state does.
Okay.
I think they overstep their bounds a lot in our local politics. They want to tell us how to solve our housing problem.
Yeah, can you give me an example? Like, what is it that they're doing recently that is making you
They
feel
passed
that way?
a law a few years ago that all of the cities had to come up with a plan to solve the affordable housing crisis. Mm-hmm. And there were financial penalties if we didn't do it. And they said, okay, so you need to come up with 5 things that you're going to do specifically to solve the housing crisis. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I don't know that it's the city's role to solve the housing crisis.
Do you think it's even possible? Do you think it's even possible for the government to solve that problem?
I don't think the government can. The best thing the government can do to solve the housing problem is to get out of it.
Okay.
I think the less we do, the better.
Okay.
And so here the government is forcing us to do something. And I think too many times it's feel-good measures. Oh, let's see, we could comply with this regulation by doing this thing. And it's something that won't have any impact on the affordability of housing. And so I resent the government telling us how we need to do it. And yet we have to comply.
Yeah.
We have to be we're being a team player. We're doing what we're told.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a choice. I don't think the state listens to us near often enough. And so I don't know that I have the greatest relationship with our state or federal government.
The local representatives, you think even the local districts that are here in Southern Utah, do you think they are good representatives of Southern Utah at the Capitol? Or is it just we just don't have a big enough voice down here?
I don't believe they're strong enough for what we need here personally, but I don't want to do it. I'm not in a position. I have no desires to run for state office.
Yeah.
But I would like to see them do things a little bit differently. I wish I had more influence with them, but I don't. It's
a gridiron up there, because you're not just battling like-minded individuals. You're battling, a couple million people that have there's no ties to Southern Utah other than that's where we go when it's cold up north, And so we're isolated in a lot of ways. And so when you're a representative down here and you got to go up north and you have to try to make this voice heard, you're in a sea of like-minded, the constituents all have their collective views that impact each other. And then there's 3.5 hours of plains and nothing before you get to Southern Utah. And so I think it's a tough job. I think it's a really tough job. And sometimes being the loudest, somebody told me you can be loud or you can be effective, but you can't be both. Right. And so it's an interesting, and this is from a buddy of mine who worked as a military liaison to a representative at the federal level. And that's the thought process up there in DC is that you could be loud or you could be effective, but you rarely can be both. And I think of Mike Johnson as that type of a guy. He's like, he's quiet, he's very calculated in what he says, and that's why he ends up being speaker, right? Because he's effective in a lot of the things that he does. But it's not always the case where you could just be loud and be effective at the same time. It's very difficult to do that. So, yeah, we're off track a little bit. Let's. I got another one for you. So this goes back to the divisive issues that you've had to make in the past. When you're faced with those issues, how do you prioritize your personal convictions versus the majority opinion of your constituents? How do you balance those two things?
For one, it's hard to judge the majority opinion of the constituents.
Okay, even in Hurricane,
we live in a bubble.
Yeah.
A little bit where you're influenced by your family and your friends or your ward, and you kind of have a good feel of what they want. But there's a whole nother part of the town that you don't even know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like everybody's clamoring to talk to you and give you their opinion. There isn't a lot of that. And so, we don't go out and do polls, and it's really hard to tell, well, what is the feeling of all the constituents? We had a poll that we did as a city recently for our civic center.
Yeah.
It was the second poll that we did because we did a poll and people felt like, well, you didn't give me a chance to answer that poll. And I don't think you asked enough people. I don't think you left the poll out long enough. So we did it again and did a poll. And it went to a lot of people around town, better the second time than the first time. And yet the answers, the responses came back half and half or a little,
similar to the first poll?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you can even do a poll and go, well, depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah. It still didn't tell you enough.
There's people who are young and who moved here and they're screaming for high density housing.
Mm-hmm.
I just need a place to live. something I can afford to get into. And then you've got the people that live in town that have been here for ages. And they're like, I don't want a single apartment anywhere. I want single family residences, and that's all I have. And then I had somebody come up to me last night at a meet and greet, and he said, I talked to you, I emailed you about this, and I'm concerned this one person built a home on 10 acres. And that was really offensive to him because, gee, they're taking up more property than they should. Shouldn't they give that property to other people and let more people build homes? We've got people wanting to build homes. And that's an interesting point of view. It's different than anything else I'd heard.
I think that fits outside of that role of government.
Yeah, like that's not my job to say you can't build a home on 10 acres.
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
But you do that. Those are that wide range of perspectives, right? You have those two extremes. So then how do you weigh those out? Well,
the way I weigh it out was our form of government is a representative form of government. And so it's not a true democracy. We don't go out and pull everybody to say, how should I vote on this issue? We elect people that represent us to the best of our knowledge. And so
then we trust them.
Candidates, and we trust them, and we say, I'm going to put all of my trust in you to make the best decision possible. You're going to spend your time and your efforts vetting these issues, learning about them, and I trust you to make that decision. And true, we want to continue to have dialogue back and forth between the voters and the elected people. That has to continue. We have to be accountable to the people. And at the same time, you need to trust us and let us make those decisions, because we are learning about those things. We are doing the best of our ability. We are praying about it and trying to really make the best decision in behalf of our constituents. And it might not be what you like, and it might not be what they like, but it's the best I can do. Sometimes I'm wrong.
Does that leadership require absolute consistency, or is there some flexibility that's required out of that leadership style?
I think there has to be flexibility. It's important to be consistent in how we do things. We don't want to be wishy-washy and say, well, I'm going to give this zone change to this person, but not to this person. And I can just choose at will to do it however I want in every moment. That's not fair. So we need to be consistent in our philosophy, but we also need to be open to correction. And
wait, you're saying that politicians can be wrong?
We sure can. In fact, we often are.
Wow.
And sometimes we have to vote on things and we don't know what the outcome's going to be. And you won't know for years.
Yeah.
And then you may not even know if that's what caused the problem.
Well, and I think the vacation rental strategies from 2017 till 2019, 2020, I think that's another example of that, where it's like we just don't know what the second and third order consequences of allowing vacation rentals. And it's a private property rights thing, and so you're a conservative sitting on the city council, and you're like, well, I'm not going to tell people what they can and can't do with it. And then all of a sudden primary ownership drops to pittance, and all these homes are owned by investors and nobody lives there full time, and it's like you just have a bunch of hotels everywhere. Neighborhoods ends up being like a hotel community. So it's tough, right? You make this decision based off of this consistency of a conservative values. I'm not going to tell people what they can and can't do with their private property, and then all of a sudden you look back and your city is a shell, and that can be a problem.
So I'll give you an example of that exact thing. So 2015 was when I was running the campaign for the first time for election, and I had built a casita onto the back of my home. And as a home designer, I do that for people all the time. And there were all kinds of restrictions back in the day that were, well, you can't have a kitchen in it, or you can't have a stove, or you have to have a door that connects your house to the casita, even though it's intended to rent out to your mother-in-law or whatever. I built it for my mother to live in. Yeah. She was aging and felt like she needed help, so I built it. And I had to sign a paper with the city that said, I promise that when my mom's gone, I'll never rent this out. And I thought, that's the stupidest thing. Why am I doing this? But the city required it. And when I decided to run for council, another person that was on the council already said, oh, by the way, you're renting out your casita. I was renting it out to newlyweds at that point because my mom died, and I was renting it out because I'd paid $100,000 to build the casita. I needed to make the payment.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to let it just sit there and be vacant.
Right.
And this other council person said, you need to do something because you're in violation of the city ordinances by renting that out. And I said, so how do I make it legal to rent out? She said, you can't. I said, what do you mean I can't? She said, well, it's illegal to rent out any portion of your home anywhere in town unless you're zoned multifamily. I said, what am I zoned? Well, I'm zoned residential. I'm not multifamily. Well, how do I change that? Well, you can't because you have to live in an area that everybody wants to multi-housing. And I'm like, something's wrong with this. I've got neighbors all the way up and down my street that are renting out their basement or their bonus room or whatever. And I'd been designing casitas for years for people. I said, this isn't right. So my first term in office, my first year, what I did was I started crafting ordinances to fix the problem in a city. I said, hey, people need to be able to use their home the way they want to. And if they want to rent out the basement, they should. Secondly, there's people that need that rental. They need a place to stay like that. And so I went
and some people need it to keep their home.
Right.
Some people need that extra revenue because they're on a fixed income or something's happened. And it's like, well, if I can't rent this out, I lose my house.
Well, and our families change. We start out with 6 children and then they all move out and you've got an empty house. What do you do with it? And so it helps you to work with your home in an evolutionary way. And so the first year of my office, I ran on, we're going to fix this problem. We're going to allow Airbnbs were brand new. We're going to allow Airbnbs because everybody was being told no by every city in Utah.
Yep.
And so that was my whole first year in office, was crafting those ordinances, going through the planning commission, holding public hearings, going through city council, and coming up with ordinances that allowed, we had to even come up with a name, accessory dwelling unit, ADU.
Yep.
That began in Hurricane City's conversations, and maybe we got the word from somewhere else, but ADUs was something that the first thing we did was draft policies on how we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And included with that, people were asking for whole home vacation rentals, which are a different animal. But we allowed those too. There was a lot of people saying, I want to be able to rent my whole home. Why can't I rent my whole home? So we passed an ordinance allowing it. And because there were city council members, so there were 3 of us that were newly elected in that term, is my memory. And it was kind of a 3-2 split. The ones that were there already didn't want vacation rentals. They had been pushing really hard against it. So as we crafted these ordinances, we did our best to get them on board. I hoped that it would pass with a 5-0 vote to do the ordinances. In the end, it didn't. It was 3-2.
Yeah.
But they had their reasons that they were against it, which were valid reasons. So we approved the whole home vacation rentals, and then 5 years down the road, turns out now they're a problem. And the view of the first city councilman really played out. Their fear came to pass, and they became, not all of them, but some of them became a problem. And so at that point, we're going, okay, this really is impacting the neighborhood in a negative way. So we came up with a way, our new city attorney figured out a way that we could find them and prosecute them in a way that was different than had been done traditionally. And that made our enforcement of our policies much more effective. And suddenly we had people complying. If they were out of compliance, we went, you're in violation. This is what you need to do to fix it. And you either fix it or you lose your license. That's the first thing we did. Sometimes that doesn't work either.
Yeah.
And so at that point, you go, okay, let's claw back this ordinance. We made a mistake. We loosened it up too much. Now let's claw it back.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. And we don't know how all of our votes are going to impact everything until years play out, and then we go, oh, that was probably a bad idea.
And I think that's okay. And I think it takes city council members and politicians to have a strong enough will to know when we've made a mistake and be willing to readjust, right? And I think that's part of a fast-moving society like we're moving, fast-growing society as we're moving, being able to adjust. Keep looking at issues, not just say this is the way we've always done it. Let's try some different things and know that there's always a way that we can back that up if we need to. We can unregulate or deregulate and then re-regulate if we need to, and it's a tough thing to do. So here's another good question that I think is specifically difficult in hurricane in southern Utah. But what's your perspective on the role of economic growth in a community's well-being, and how does it compare to priorities like quality of life and cultural preservation? Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. There's a lot of interaction between those things.
Yeah.
From my perspective, and I think it's true, if a city is not growing, it's dying.
Mm-hmm.
There is no, let's just leave it the way it is. Because our families grow. Mm-hmm. People change jobs and they move. We're a transient society, and because of those changes, we have to have growth because we're constant, especially in an area where we live in a place that everybody wants to live here. Mm-hmm. They come to Zion and they go, oh, I didn't know a place like this existed. There's towns right here that we can move to.
Yeah.
And then we can have all the lakes and the hiking, biking that we never knew we could do. You know, you go back east, everything is privately owned.
Yeah.
And they come here and it's just like heaven.
Yeah.
And so fortunately, unfortunately, whatever, we live in a place that a lot of people are going to move to.
Yeah.
And we cannot provide the infrastructure and the needs to the people if we're not growing.
Yeah.
So we have no choice but to grow economically, which means bringing in new businesses. Businesses don't want to come in unless they have rooftops mm-hmm. of people to pay for their business.
Yeah.
So you're going to have both population growth and commercial growth, and the growth is important. And do we want to control it? Absolutely. We want to be able to guide that and not just have it done in a haphazard way that we blunder all kinds of things in trying to provide after the fact instead of before the fact.
Yeah. How do you view that control? Like, what's the mechanism to control that economic growth, knowing that it's not necessarily prioritized over, heritage and community well-being. It's not prioritized over it, just knowing that it works within it. What's the mechanism that you think should be used in order to kind of tamper or guide that economic growth?
I don't know that I have the best answers for that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different opinions on how to manage the growth. From my perspective, anytime the government intervenes and tries to decide for the market how it's going to react to things, prices go up and it causes problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that our city can play a huge role except in this. I know that our state wants high-rise apartment buildings in Hurricane. I don't. And I don't think most of the Hurricane citizens do. I think that would have a very negative impact on our way of life. And so we don't want to see high-density high-rises in Hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, apartments play a role in providing housing. And there's a supply and demand that affects the price. There's the type of construction. When you build up, it's going to be cheaper than building out. And so that our property values have just gone through the roof, and it's the cost of property that's made everything go up so bad.
Mm.
And so when you stack it into an apartment building, it's going to save money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question that all the citizens have is, okay, it saves money for the builder, but is it gonna reflect that in the rent prices or the sale price for the people at the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the answer to that. I think the builders are taking more profit than maybe they ought to. We have a greed problem, we do.
Mm.
But the greed isn't just in the builders or the developers, it's in the people. As a homeowner, as a home designer, I can't get anybody to have me design a home that's affordable. I mean, I do a few, and I do a few more now than I used to, but people want something that they can turn around and sell and double their money next week.
Yeah.
And so instead of building a home that fits their budget that they can afford, they want a home with all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
Because they're going to turn around and sell it. That's their whole goal. And that's not bad. I can't say, hey, that's not right.
That's the free market, right?
That's the free market.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the nature of the beast. That's the way things work. But when I built my home, I wanted to live in it my whole life and raise my kids and retire and die in it.
Yeah.
And I wanted it as affordable as possible. And so I built my home that way.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't intend to sell it. I wasn't out to flip it and make a buck. People do that, but I never felt. People also lose money trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a gambling game that I never wanted to play.
Yeah.
But it happens enough that drives what we're seeing built to a higher level than it needs to be.
Yeah.
I would love to see people building 8-foot ceilings, Formica countertops,
Yeah.
the lower grade carpets. Those are the things that will save money. You do shingles on your roof instead of tile.
Mm-hmm.
Do one sink in the master bathroom. You don't have to have an enclosed toilet. Those are things that all cost extra money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really want to solve the affordable housing problem, to me, you build an affordable house.
Yeah.
You start by your floor plan, you make it simple, use simple materials. Nobody wants to do that. The builders certainly don't want to do that. And so much of our sale of our real estate is not available. You can't go buy a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people can't go buy a lot and develop it. You have to find a builder that's doing a dozen of them and go buy one of theirs.
That's right.
And the builders won't do that. And so the Self-Help Homes in Hurricane is doing that. And the Habitat for Humanity is doing that. And so there are a few, but they're not enough of them. They're not big enough to have a huge impact on the cost of our home.
Yeah.
But to me, that's the solution to affordable housing.
Yeah.
You build a home that you can afford.
Yeah.
And not intend to flip it.
Yeah. It's a tough challenge. Okay, my last question.
Sure.
What's your view on term limits at the city and local government level, and then even maybe state and federal level? Do you have a perspective?
I do. They have their place. I believe we need term limits on a federal level for sure.
Okay.
Probably on a state level. I think we have some problems. Our Congress, think about our congressmen. They're only in for 2 years and they have to run for re-election.
Yeah.
I think that's crazy.
Really?
They spend all of their time electioning.
Mm-hmm. They do.
It's all about the next election, and they spend millions of dollars trying to get elected every 2 years. To me, they ought to be in 3 or 4 years and then run for re-election. So you're not wasting all of your time running for re-election. I face having to fight for re-election every 4 years, and it's the worst part of the job.
Yeah.
Running an election campaign is horrible. Why do they have to do it every 2 years? It's nonsense.
Yeah.
And yet I don't want them there forever.
Yeah.
They become, even Mike Lee. Mike Lee's one of my favorite people,
Yeah.
but he might have been there too long at this point.
Interesting.
We might need to make a change.
Mm.
And anybody there that long becomes a problem. They're too corruptible over time.
Mm-hmm.
On a local level, I think our elections is the answer. You study the issues and I think it's hard enough to learn. I talked about my ability or how much I learned my first term and what it was like. I needed a whole term just to learn the job.
Yeah.
to learn how to do it. I'm not sure I know it right.
Yeah.
But is 2 terms enough? Maybe.
3 terms?
I'm not going to run another one after this. This would make it 3 terms.
Mhm.
And I think anybody running more than 3 is crazy. But
Yeah, 12 years is a long time.
yeah, 12 is a long time. And I don't think we need more than 3 years. The mayor brought that up and wanted our council to vote for term limits, even though the ballot initiative failed, that she didn't get enough signatures in time. She wanted our council to vote and do it as a city anyway. And my feeling was, I think 3 years is better. 3 terms is better than 2. And you get somebody that's really knowledgeable, and you don't want to kick him out just because time's up.
Yeah.
And it's not that other people can't do it, but once in a while, there's unique people in the community that are just well-versed and knowledgeable about certain things.
Effective, yeah.
And I think they ought to be allowed to stay if the voters want them to stay.
Yeah.
If they don't want them to stay, vote them out.
Yeah.
That's a real simple solution to it. So I was not in favor of the 2-year term limit that she was promoting. I signed her ballot initiative when she came. I was
Put it up for vote.
I'm
yeah.
okay for everybody to vote on it. If that's what everybody wants, I'm good with it. So I was one of the first people to sign it. But at the same time, I'm not quite sure I'm that strict on 2 years for local people.
Yeah, or 2 terms.
So it's a maybe too long of an answer.
No, it's good. I just want people thinking about it. I want people that are looking at it, demanding it out of the federal level. But I think the movement has to start at the bottom, because they're not going to do it. You know, there's no senator sitting up there like, yeah, let's really push this one through. It's the collective are going to have to see that this is a domino that can have a really beneficial impact. I think it it decreases the power of the lobby. I think it allows for fresh perspectives and to not get stuck doing the same thing over and over again. I think it's more nimble for the way society progresses and changes over such a fast period of time these days. You know, we're not running off of Pony Express anymore, right? We have instant data right at our fingertips, and everybody has access to that. And so for us to be able to not get stuck in the mud, I think there's a term limit should be something that people are more demanding of. How long that looks and what the requirements are of that, I think that's part of the debate, but it should be had, and we should pick something. Let's pick something, you know. And so I don't know. That's why I bring it up, is that at the local level, it's where it's got to start.
And I agree with that.
So
I don't think the federal government's ever going to solve that problem.
No. So I think it's got to start at the grassroots type situation and see if we get people thinking about it. But all right, Kevin Thomas, good luck.
Thank you.
Where can people find more information about you?
My Facebook page is open.
Okay.
Kevin Thomas. You can find me. I have a Kevin Thomas for City Council Facebook page.
Is it the number 4?
I think my Facebook page is the word 4.
Yeah.
I have a website. It's not current. I need to update
it. Okay.
It's Kevin Thomas for City Council with the number 4. But it lacks a lot. I need to work on it.
Okay. I know.
Kind of got locked out of it. I'm like, how did I get into that 4 years ago?
I understand that. So, and then for everybody else, go to votestg.com. And I have all 5 cities: Santa Clara, Ivins, St. George, Washington City, and Hurricane City, the big 5 cities in the county that are all up for elections. You go to votestg.com, scroll down to the bottom, pick your city, and all the candidates are listed there. They have the surveys that I sent out, 7 questions, and then the interviews are there on that same webpage. But then I'll have a link to your Facebook page, and if you get the website updated, the link will be there as well. So you can go to votestg.com and find one stop for all the candidates, so you're not having to browse all over everywhere. You can find everything right there.
And my phone number and email are all on there, public.
Sweet.
So.
Perfect. Just reach out to you. Well, good luck. Primaries coming up. This is the first run, and then you got a little while till November. But hope you enjoyed this episode, everybody. Make sure you like, subscribe, share it with your friends, family, people that are locals. Let's get the information. We want to increase the voter turnout. We really want to get people out and voting for the local stuff. It's not a federal year, so we have a low turnout. My goal is to increase that voter turnout by using these tools. So please share with your friends. Hit the notification button as more and more episodes are coming out. We've got like 28 interviews for all city council and mayors across the county. So check us out. We'll see you out there, everybody. Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social media websites. We love your support. We love the dialogue. We want to continue that going.
Find us at realestate435.com. We'd love to help you find a house here in town or help you get wherever you're going.